Right, I'm here at London Euston Station. Very different to what it was in 1863 when my characters Bannister and Ginger disembarked from the train from Liverpool and come via Euston down to Downing Street to meet the Prime Minister. And Ginger getting himself in a terrible state. So this is the first stop on my London sojourn, and I'm going to go to Downing Street next. Alright. I cheated a little bit. I didn't go to Downing Street. I've just decided to go through Westminster. But it's somewhere up there that Ginger and Bannister roll up to Downing Street and they decide to cause trouble. Big trouble. But you'll have to read the book to find exactly what. This is London town. I'm here at the British Library, and you can see it's right next to King's Cross and St Pancras there, a Gilbert Scott building behind me. I'm going to do a little bit of promotion for the book, so hitting the road, stomping the pavements, let's see what happens. So just walking around London, around the back of St Pancras. No idea whether it works or not, whether flyers work, whether people pick up on them. It certainly does for music, for bands, so I'm giving it a go for this. You know, whether it's this, whether it's Amazon, whether it's word of mouth, social media, what does work for selling books? This is all a big experiment, so let's see what happens. So the nice people at the British Library also directed me here. This is Pancras Square Library, which isn't too far from there, and it's kind of like a village library, right bang slap in the middle of London, which I love, run by Camden Council, and they've kindly taken on the book. They're going to buy it, put it in their libraries, and also put some flyers around the place. So yeah, result. So I lived in London for the best part of 10 years, and what always gets me every time I come back is the sense of scale here. Just coming right through Euston, walking around this part of King's Cross, massive change even in the past few years since I was last here, but it is the sense of scale, and I suppose it's a sort of it's a good analogy for where I am with the book. There's a almost unlimited audience readership for the book, but how do I go out and find them? Well, this is how I go about it. Just getting myself out there and putting the word out. So yeah, interesting. So I just crossed the road from King's Cross, and all of a sudden I'm in Bloomsbury. This is Judd Street behind me. So home of the quintessential Bloomsbury set. So Virginia Woolf, E.M. Forster, et al. Very much a sort of centre of book selling and publishing, not just in London or the UK, or probably the whole world. Huge traditions here. So yeah, coals to Newcastle, or rather books to Bloomsbury. You hear that? Exactly, quiet. Just step off Euston Road into Bloomsbury and it is really quiet for London. Yes, it's another bookshop. So this is one of my old haunts, right behind me, the Lord John Russell pub, again in the heart of Bloomsbury, and that was a place where many of my sort of early ideas were formed as a writer when I was living in London, studying Russian of all things. So I'm going to take a little walk, short walk from here into Russell Square, and show you another place that is part of my history, all to do with spies. Что делаешь? Я хочу пиво сейчас. So here I am at the former site of the School of Slavonic and East European Studies, which is where I went to university in 1991, just as the Cold War had ended. And this place really is the where I had a grounding really in all things to do with espionage. It was very much a feeder college for the Foreign Office during the Cold War. And although I never went into that game myself, honestly, I never. I participated in that culture. So in many ways it was a sort of grounding for Water Street, kind of sharing a space with people who were either agents themselves or related to agents or who taught agents. And that was the School of Slavonic Studies, Slavonic and East European Studies. No longer in this site, it's actually part of UCL these days, but this place is very close to my heart, and the start of many adventures. The password is Ulica Voda. So this building behind me turns up in many films. Huge Art Deco edifice, once the tallest building in London. It's Senate House, and it's the other building really it's involved in my story when I was first here as an undergraduate student at the School of Slavonic and East European Studies. You can easily get lost in there, and I did frequently. So I'm just here on Denmark Street, which is another one of my old hangouts back in the day, back in the 90s, and it was much more bohemian back then. More places you could access for putting flyers, for instance, these things. But it doesn't seem to be that way now. There are a few music shops where you can buy hideously expensive guitars, but the kind of place which is the world centre of music publishing, where many of the kind of iconic names of songwriting in the 50s and 60s particularly came in through this place. But now it seems like a kind of pastiche of itself. Well, I found one place that was okay with me putting flyers down. That's Wunjo. So big up for them. Wunjo on Denmark Street. You get the thumbs up from me. So this for me is one of the most iconic bookshops in London. It's Foyles and Charing Cross Road. So I'm here on Frith Street, which is in Soho, and it's another one of my haunts from back when. Just behind me there is Ronnie Scott's Jazz Club, one of the most famous jazz clubs in the world. And then a road down there is Dean Street, which is where the old marquee used to be as well. So all the famous acts used to play there, but in the 90s it kind of meant something different to me. I worked on Broadwick Street and sort of frequented a lot of the establishments in Soho, and again another place that sort of made Water Street in a sense because of the characters and the sort of activities that went on around these here parts. So this is Soho. So this is the Groucho Club, which sprung up in the 80s, I think, and it's sort of referencing the famous quote from Groucho Marx about never wanting to be a member of a club that invited him in, or something like that. But anyway, this is Soho's Groucho Club, and a fab place it is too. Just seeing this, so you've got duck soup right next door to the Groucho Club. Anyone get that? Maybe? This is going to sound strange being in the centre of London, but in a sense I'm not in the centre of London. This is Soho, and there is definitely a vibe, always has been, even now, 2023, of it being a village. There's still a feel of that, quite unique really, for all the kind of centre of the worldness of the place. Very interesting. So one thing about being around here is there's not really any place to put flyers down, which is probably a true sign of what is bohemian, what is punk, what is free in terms of being able to express and advertise something. Much more the case in Liverpool. You can walk into pretty much any pub or theatre or venue, and they'll happily take flyers off you. And I don't know, that's a sign of progress, it's a sign of how much it's changed around here. Just saying, London folks, what is it? And then you get round the corner to Oxford Street, and it's human traffic. Crazy. Of course, in some ways, living down here, there wasn't really room to come up with a story and follow it through, because the day-to-day craziness was too much. It was hard enough to make a living, really, when I was down here and bring all my ideas together. So in a sense, it was easier to take it all in and leave and then come up with the stories. So it's one of those things when you go back to a place and then realise what's changed. Just behind me, that's the University of London Union now, or was, I should say. And I was going to drop a few flyers in there for old time's sake. Back in the day, early 90s, I worked in there as a posh pot washer, a salubrious role. And my boss was none other than Ricky Gervais. Not that he was boss of the kitchen, I think he was boss of the whole building. Limited experience of him, he didn't look too happy to be there. But then again, he still doesn't look too happy, so whatever. Nice one, Ricky. And yeah, funnily enough, just behind me there is Waterstones, which used to be Dillon's. So I'm going to pop in there and say hello. So I suppose being back in London, it sort of reminds me of a life that might have been, sort of parallel universe where I did actually settle down here and I didn't return to Liverpool. And but for one or two quirks of fate, that might well have been the case. Of course, I'm glad to be going back to the place I grew up, and it is a sort of reminder that London's only, well, on a good day, 2 hours away, but in many ways it is so different. It's a place of dreams, but also a place of frustrations, a place of contradictions, really. So that's been my trip to the capital, and there's an insight into how it brought me to Water Street ultimately. Bye London, see you again.